be seated, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned earlier, for this session, we've got 3 channels of simultaneous translation available. You can see the languages up on the screens. Just to repeat, use the audio sets that have been given to you and leave them behind after you've used them. If you forget, we will have a reminder at the door as you leave. Please ensure that you leave the audio sets behind. Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. A reminder to kindly keep mobile phones in the silent mode. May I request those who are standing to the left of the stage, may I request you all to please take your seats. There are plenty of chairs available. Please be seated. You're blocking the screens that are on. As we await the Honourable Ministers into the hall, I'd like to just remind you that we have an exhibition arranged outside on the lawns, which we request all of you to kindly find the time to visit between today and the next 2 days. This is the Prime Minister's Gati Shakti exhibition, organized by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry and the DPIIT. Do find time between today and day after to visit this exhibition on the lawns. For the benefit of those who've just joined us, for this session, ladies and gentlemen, we have simultaneous translation available in 3 languages: English, Portuguese, and Indonesian Bahasa. Please use the audio kits that have been provided to you, and after use, please leave them behind on the chairs or hand them over to the volunteers who are available on the floor and at the door as you leave. Channel 1, English; Channel 3, Portuguese; and Channel 4, Bahasa. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin. We're just waiting for a couple of ministers to join us. May I request those who are standing to please find a seat? Please settle down. There are audio kits that are being given out to everyone. Please be seated. A reminder to kindly keep mobile phones on the silent mode. Ladies and gentlemen, please settle down. May I request the Director General CII, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, to please welcome our esteemed ministers, delegates, and guests.
Alex. Good evening, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very, very special evening, a very special session, if I can say, done through extraordinary logistics by our Honorable Minister, who's got a phenomenal group straight in from Jaipur into Delhi, flying them from the airport, driving them through the crazy traffic into Taj Palace for being with you all, for being with all of us. And I must welcome our Minister and his colleagues, ministerial colleagues, for being here with us, Excellencies. This is indeed of great, great value and pleasure for the B20 to be having an occasion to interact, and be with you. This session is made possible because from day zero, when we started planning the B20 summit, our Honorable Minister had in mind as to how can we get this phenomenal group of ministers into this summit, and the date was selected to be back-to-back with the Trade Ministers meeting. Just for the information of our Honorable Trade Ministers who are participating with us, the B20 summit has in this room approximately 1,000 delegates, another 500 watching from the other room, so 1,500 delegates from 55 countries. So it's just not the B20 countries, but B20++. Excellencies, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, we have had over today, tomorrow, and day after 25 different sessions and a few ministerial sessions. Of course, the grand finale on Sunday would be with our Honorable Prime Minister. But 71 speakers with 50 speakers from the B20 countries with 9 different subject areas, which was curated and understood, or rather really led by the B20 chair, Mr. Chandrasekaran, and the chairman of Tata Sons, who has spent 10 months, a lot of time together with a group of from all the countries. Everyone participated in these 9 tracks. So welcome to you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to you, all our delegates, industries, businesses from all over India, as well as from outside the world. So outside of India. So may I, with that, welcome the chairperson of this session, the Honorable Minister of Commerce and Industry of the Government of India, Shri Piyush Goyal, to lead this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Shall we?
May I now request the Honourable Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, to please welcome all our guests up. And we have with us the Trade Minister from the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Dr. Zulkifli Hasan. The Minister of Commerce, Industry and Investment Promotion, Sultanate of Oman, His Excellency Qais bin Mohammed Al Youssef. The Secretary of State for Business and Trade, President of the Board of Trade, and the Minister for Women and Equalities, Government of the United Kingdom, the Right Honourable Kemi Badenoch, MP.
Give the other one. There should be a contrast. There should be a contrast.
His Excellency Mr. Wang Shouman, China International Trade Representative, and the Vice Minister of Commerce, China.
Hello.
Thank you.
His Excellency Dr. Thani bin Ahmed Al Zayudi, Chair, WTO's 13th Ministerial Conference and the Minister of State for Foreign Trade, United Arab Emirates. We have all the honourable ministers joining us. They're on their way. We will be joined by His Excellency Mr. Tipu Munshi, Commerce Minister, Government of Bangladesh, the Honourable Mary Ng, Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development, Canada, His Excellency Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis, Executive Vice President and European Commissioner for Trade, the European Union.
Take it in the end.
His Excellency Mr. Dukgan An, the Minister for Trade, Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, Republic of Korea. Ambassador Catherine Tai, the United States Trade Representative, United States of America. Senator, the Honourable Tim Ayres, Assistant Minister for Trade and Manufacturing, Australia. His Excellency Mr. Marcio Elias Rosa, the Vice Minister, Ministry of Development, Industry, Commerce and Services from Brazil. And Her Excellency Ms. Nomalungelo Gina, the Deputy Minister for Trade, Industry and Competition, South America. They will join us as they arrive. I now would like to hand over the session to the Honourable Minister from India, Mr. Piyush Goyal.
Thank you very much. A very good evening to all my distinguished ministerial colleagues, excellencies in the room, captains of industry from 55 countries, I heard. All the distinguished participants in this very important B20 program, a culmination of a year full of activities, action-packed, outcome-oriented work that all our business colleagues from around the world have engaged in. Friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. When I took on the role of the minister, I didn't know I'll have to do the job of a moderator or anchoring a panel also. I don't know if Mr. Chandrasekharan, the chair of the B20, is going to give me an added incentive or a free ticket on Vistara.
Thank you.
But truly, I feel very redeemed when I see the enthusiasm that the B20 has been able to generate across continents, and the very impressive guest list, the very, very high quality of dialogue and discussion that I was appraised about, and the very serious interest in the India story that we see around the world. It's a moment of pride for all of us assembled in the room. We are celebrating not one, not two, not three, which I said in Jaipur, but now 4 successes. It is only 2 days ago that our aspiration to land on the moon culminated in a very successful Chandrayaan-3, actually being the first country in the world landing on the South Pole, the south zone of the moon. Soon thereafter, we had a young Indian lad become the world chess master. This morning, all of us collectively worked towards coming up with a very, very strong message for the entire world as a G20 grouping, expressing our confidence in the future of business, expressing our vote in support of trade, investment across borders. The outcome document, amongst other things, reflects on 3 major priorities which we have all collectively resolved to work on. A, we are looking at mapping global value chains to enable more and more countries, particularly the less developed countries, smaller countries, the developing world, to also start contributing and participating in supply chains, help create trusted partnerships, and encourage growth of international trade and economies. The second outcome that we all collectively agreed upon revolved around the Jaipur call for action, where we have agreed that we shall provide a huge database of information for MSMEs, our micro, small and medium enterprises, who contribute significantly to economic activity around the world, provide jobs and work opportunities to millions, and are truly the gem of most economies. We believe the MSMEs, due to sheer inability, due to small size, due to lack of adequate information in public domain, are not able to encash several opportunities and contribute to the extent that we would like them to. We have agreed that we shall strengthen our databases. Warm welcome. We shall strengthen the databases that will help us encourage MSMEs' greater participation in international trade and therefore also economic activity. The third major pillar on which our G20 concluded today rested on our collective commitment to promote digitalization and encourage international trade to become paperless. And on these three pillars, we have all collectively resolved to support businesses around the world, to encourage greater economic activity, and ultimately look at a sustainable, inclusive future for 8 billion people around the world, a better world for our young boys and girls to live in, to work in, more job opportunities, and ultimately meeting our sustainable development goals through expansion in trade and business. The fourth reason for our celebration today is this wonderful gathering of the B20, where probably for the first time we would have such an illustrious panel of ministers from G20 countries on one stage. I'm grateful to the chair of B20, Mr. N. Chandrasekaran, chairman of Tata Sons, to the CII, its president, Mr. Dinesh, Secretary General, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, to all of you colleagues for giving all of us an opportunity to meet with you, to share our thoughts with you, and engage what I believe will be a meaningful dialogue about our perspective on international trade, our expectations and our offerings to the business community at large, and therefore how we can build the bridge between B20 and G20, bring them closer together, and ultimately feed into greater outcomes as the G20 grows over the years. I'm indeed very, very grateful to each of my colleague ministers for accepting our request. As Chandrajit mentioned, we've barely landed in Delhi, and different flights coming in and different ministers literally driving in straight from the airport. After the initial introductions, we've had Minister Tim Ayers from Australia join us at the extreme end. We've had Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis, the European Trade Commissioner of the EU, join us. And we have some more ministers on the way, struggling through the huge traffic jams, probably thanks to all the B20 sessions around the city. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin with my dear friend and sister, Kemi Badenoch, the Secretary of State, the Commerce Minister of the United Kingdom, with a very simple question. Since Valdis has joined us, I think it's very appropriate that we should all in this room know whether the United Kingdom regrets leaving the European Union.
So I knew Minister Goyal was going to do this because he likes to be naughty and sets traps and tricks for for us trade ministers, but we are all wily and we are aware of his trap. So I knew he was going to ask me this. So the short answer to that question is no. We are not regretful, because what we are trying to do is open up our economy more to the rest of the world. That doesn't mean that there is a hostility between the UK and the EU. It means that there is a change in the dynamic. And we are still close to the EU. We have the strongest and closest free trade agreement, the Trade and Continuity Agreement with the EU. My friend Valdis is here. We have frequent meetings. Yes, things have changed, but actually our leaving the EU was about new opportunities. The Indo-Pacific is where the global middle class, is going to be coming from in the years to come. India is a perfect example of what the world is going to be looking like in the future, and we need to make sure that our economy and our country is adapting to that in a way that works for the UK. We're currently negotiating a free trade agreement, which Minister Goyal has promised me is going to be one of a kind, the highest precedent, the most ambitious free trade agreement. So you can see him smiling because he's just on the cusp of delivering this for us. But there's so much potential, and there is so much potential, and I think that we need to focus on what is positive in the world today, when there's a backdrop of so much difficult news. We look at what's happening since COVID, the war in Russia, Ukraine, the changes to supply chains. We all need to build in resilience, and the area that does that is trade. Trade is one of the few areas that delivers good news. So many other areas, health, defense, it can be quite tricky, but we are the good news ministers, and the work that we're going to be doing to get more trade around the world, the increase that we've seen with India, for instance. I think our trade has increased by significant amounts just in the last year. I wrote an article in the papers yesterday around that. There's all to play for. So this is a very, very positive time to be working in trade. And I'm pleased about the relationship that the UK has with India, but also with the EU, with Australia, with so many of our partners around the world. And thank you for asking that question, because it's given me an opportunity to share that good news with all of you today. Thank you.
A warm welcome to Ambassador Catherine Tai from the United States of America.
So you happy with that answer?
Well, you've been too diplomatic. Diplomacy is something I never learned, and that helped me conclude a trade deal with Australia very quickly. But Tim, would you like to give them some tips about how to agree to my requests and quickly wrap up the free trade agreement?
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to respond to that. It's a lot easier than the question I thought I might have got, Piyush, so thank you very much. I am, firstly, just want to say two things. What a fantastic gathering of the world's business community here in New Delhi and the B20. It's so good to see you all. And secondly, I just wanted to say, Piyush, on behalf of Australia, that India's hosting of this G20 Trade and Investment Ministers meeting has been absolutely fantastic. If you're here representing your business and you haven't been to Jaipur, get yourself to Jaipur. It is a beautiful city. And the effort, Piyush, that your team put in to making this a successful G20 is absolutely fantastic. And your leadership and India's leadership on focusing the G20 discussion as we approach challenging World Trade Organization discussions has been absolutely terrific. So I wanted to thank you in front of this crowd personally for that enormous effort. And hope that gets me out of answering the question that you directed towards me. I think that the work that is going into high quality bilateral agreements, and I think of the first phase agreement that we have reached between Australia and India, that is an agreement that is so welcome in Australia, that already has businesses accessing the facilitation provisions of that to create more economic activity and more jobs. It is, we are deep into discussions about the second phase agreement, and I won't be as cheeky as Kemi and ask you to make concessions on the stage, but I am so confident that this is going to be an agreement that is going to help both of our countries in our development, that is going to assist our businesses to engage and to grow, not just in India and Australia, but it is an agreement that will be good for our region, the region that we share, the Indo-Pacific, and it will be an opportunity for us to work together on some of the big challenges of the age: climate and energy, critical minerals, getting our supply chains right and resilient, and lifting the living standards of our peoples and our region.
Thank you, Tim. In fact, I must share with you my own personal experience with the Australians as we were negotiating the free trade agreement. They were almost at the end of the tenure of government, and there were concerns whether India should enter into an agreement or wait for the elections. But since we had concluded all the operative parts of the agreement with Australia for the first phase, we decided to go ahead. I must acknowledge that in the elections there was a change of government. But despite the change of government, the positivity and the confidence that the incoming government had in the previous government helped not only secure the free trade agreement, but actually expedite it. We not only got it ratified in a record time, it came into effect faster than one would have ever imagined any other free trade agreement. And then when the Prime Minister was in Australia, the reception he got from the current government led by Prime Minister, His Excellency Mr. Tony Albanese, was as warm as the reception he got from the leader of the opposition. And I think this bipartisan comfort that both parties gave, the opposition and the ruling party, for international trade to the business world, is a great message which can really help businesses, can help trade grow, can help international engagements flourish. And for those of us from India in this room, I think the message is well understood, loud and clear, that we would also be looking for seeing more and more bipartisan engagements, bipartisan support for international engagements, because end of the day, when we have so many states, when the central government, state governments, all are working together, it's very important that for the outside world, India presents a united face. India presents a country which speaks in one voice and doesn't go to Oxford University and make disparaging comments about their own country. But we leave that for the moment. Excellency, Mr. Wang Shuan, the minister from China, and I were engaged in the RCEP discussions 4 years ago. Do you still regret that we chose not to join the RCEP?
Thank you, Minister. China-Indian trade relationship has been growing very fast. Last year, our bilateral trade reached $130 billion US. If there had been an FTA agreement between China and India, either bilaterally or in RCEP context, the trade potential existing between our two countries will be much further tapped to the benefit of our two peoples. So it is your decision to decide whether you will join RCEP, but RCEP's door will be always open to India. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Minister Shuan, the concern is, Wang, the concern is slightly different. We are already concerned that the bilateral trade, even though $130 billion is largely skewed in favor of China, the Indian industry feels that if we had entered into this agreement with the RCEP, this trade would have certainly increased, but it would only have increased the trade deficit further, because we just can't seem to understand the kind of pricing, the kind of cost at which you are supplying goods. It's a matter that I think all the ministers would like to know, how you can supply goods at less than the raw material cost.
Minister Goyal, I would like to congratulate you to be a very successful trade minister for India, because even though you are not able to balance your trade with each and every of your trading partner, you have been very successful in maintaining a global trade balance overall for the country. So it is natural that you will have trade deficits with countries like China, but you will also have trade surpluses with other countries. It is very good that you are able to maintain your trade balance globally.
Well, as was said in the Rajya Sabha, in a conversation between the chairman of the Rajya Sabha and the leader of the opposition, where the leader of the opposition said to the chair that, Chairman, you're always looking to the right-hand side. You're not looking to the left. The left is where the leader of the opposition sits in the upper house of parliament. The chairman had retorted that his heart was on the left-hand side. So my heart here is with Catherine Tai from the United States of America. And why I say this is because it's been a complete change in working with Catherine as the USTR. She is the third USTR I've had the occasion to work with, but truly a phenomenal person, a phenomenal captain of trade and commerce for the United States of America, and her personal leadership and role that she and Valdez played at the World Trade Organization Ministerial in Geneva last year, MC12, was absolutely outstanding. And a big round of applause for Catherine for helping steer the MC12 last time around. Catherine, are you as optimistic for the MC13 in Abu Dhabi next year?
Piyush, in our line of work, we are always optimistic. So yes.
And I must say, she's also been instrumental in creating history for the World Trade Organization. And I say this because the United States and India were traditionally known to be having a lot of trade disputes. We had 7 trade disputes at the World Trade Organization. Under her leadership, our officials, governments, and the support that we got from President Biden and Prime Minister Modi, Catherine and I were able to resolve 6 out of those 7 disputes bilaterally without going to court. And I think that's a first for the World Trade Organization, and possibly a template, as the DG of WTO mentioned. Catherine, do you see that as something more countries should adopt, working bilaterally to resolve such differences?
Look, I think in terms of trade disputes, trade frictions, trade disagreements, they happen all the time. And on this, Piyush, I wanted to take a step back and look at the G20 presidency of India and your theme for G20, which I really think, I've been thinking about it on all the way from Jaipur to here today. It's one planet, one family, one future. And it emphasizes that we are all a part of a whole. That family emphasis, I think, is really critical. So in all of our families, inevitably, there are going to be disagreements and tensions. When it comes to dispute settlement, the critical moment in every disagreement is that point at which there is a political alignment of wills to resolve the issue as much as possible. And I think that what we've done together is to demonstrate that commitment and that alignment of political will. So I think that that is always possible. And in fact, that is the whole point of a dispute settlement system, is to get the parties to the point where they will commit to each other to try to resolve the issue. And what we've done, I agree, is a really template-breaking pattern of partnership between the United States and India.
Valdis, Ambassador Tai talked about family. You run a family of 27 children, 27 member states. How is it like when you have to reconcile differences and get everybody on board on any subject? I mean, we have 27 states in the country, and we are struggling all the time to get everybody on board.
Yeah. Thank you, Piyush, honorable business leaders. Well, first of all, I would like to join the colleagues who are congratulating you on a very successful G20 trade ministerial. Indeed, a great success, and was a great pleasure to be in Jaipur for this occasion, and also for having back-to-back the B20 meeting, because indeed it's important that the world, the voice of the business is heard in global trade. That we discuss how to develop global trading system not only among ourselves, but we also discuss with business, which have hands-on experience in how to actually do global international trade on the ground. And you ask as a question indeed, so how we are dealing with 27 EU member states, and it must be said it's not easy. There are always discussions, there are disagreements, but some of you already mentioned that there is a political will for us to work together as a European family. We are 27 member states, but we share one single market. The fact that we are having this single market makes us also the global trading superpower and the largest single market in the world. And I would say, especially following Russia's aggression against Ukraine, there was also increased consensus in the EU of the need to strengthen ties with reliable partners around the world, to ensure diversified and resilient supply chains. And this was also in this spirit that we relaunched the negotiations with India. So now we need to really focus and make sure that we are able to get them to the successful conclusion. And we're going to discuss it tomorrow in our bilateral meeting. There is in this difficult geopolitical context, understanding that democracies in the world, the partners which want to work together for global peace and prosperity, need to join forces and to deal with the complex geopolitical complexity of geopolitical situation in current times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valdis. And maybe our states could take a lesson or two from the wonderful work that the EU has been able to do to bring everybody together. Ms. Mary Ng, the Honorable Minister from Canada. Helene is the State Secretary from Switzerland and has been in active dialogue with India for a free trade agreement with the EFTA nations. That's Switzerland, Iceland, Norway, and finally, I can pronounce Liechtenstein. Is that okay?
Almost, yes.
Almost. Oh Lord, I've practiced this so often. We've been having some wonderful discussions, and sometimes people raise the question that, well, most of these countries have a small population. They already have an income of $100,000 per capita, so They're not looking to buy new goods or spend more money on new things. Aging population, and possibly also the fact that you don't have duties on most of your imports. So people ask me the question, what is in it for you or for India when you enter into an agreement with a grouping like the EFTA? I believe it will be good for India, otherwise I wouldn't be on the table with you. But I would like everybody to hear it from you, why you think this will be a good partnership.
Well, thank you, Piyush, first of all, for associating Switzerland to the G20 and then also to this B20. Switzerland, as you know, is a bottom-up country, very much oriented towards private sector. So I have to say I'm almost more used to speak to business than being in big government fora. So wonderful to be here. Well, we certainly believe that we're an interesting trading partner. It's true, you always remind me that we're just 15 million people living in EFTA countries, but we're a large foreign direct investor exporter, actually, a net exporter. And I think that is what is probably most interesting about us. We're also good consumers because of our GDPs and so on and so on. But I think the interest for India would be the fact that we export FDI. And as I tried to explain to your minister, we export smart FDI because Switzerland is known to be a very innovative country. We're often ranked as the most innovative country. We're known for quality products, for you know, all sorts of versatile, for example, instruments and so on, so high precision tools and so on and so on. So we believe that we could really help assist India in what you're trying to become, that premier manufacturing and service place of the world. So smart FDI, it's not just money. It's smart FDI. We also have a dual vocational educational tradition in Switzerland. So Swiss companies, when they export, they do not bring Swiss staff with them. They are here to train and really empower Indian people, give them quality jobs. I think this is the value proposition from Switzerland.
Wonderful. In fact, one other proposition that I think the Swiss and their partner countries bring to the table, which is of great interest to India, is innovation. The fact that you are very strong on research and development, particularly in the pharma sector. And I do think India has significant skills and talent who could help the Swiss companies do the same thing faster, possibly at a more competitive price, and therefore make medicines available for the whole world at more competitive prices. So we would look forward to more innovation partnership with your companies.
Yeah, so as I told you, it's apparently difficult to pitch EFTA to Indians, but pitching India to Switzerland is very easy. Of course, everybody sees the opportunities, and this is my 4th visit this year. I think that shows that we're highly interested, and we're hopefully racing to the finishing line, Piyush. I'm counting on excellent offers from your side.
Minister Dr. Hassan from Indonesia, are you relieved that you no more are the chair of the G20 once you gave up last year? Did you heave a sigh of relief? Did you celebrate, maybe free from the tensions of G20? I'm asking because I want to know how I should feel after today.
Tes. I call my friend Bara Hasibuan. Allow me to speak in Bahasa and Bara Hasibuan can translate. Okay. Mr. Pius, saya sungguh bahagia dan mengucapkan selamat atas segala prestasi yang dicapai oleh negara Anda, India. Juga memimpin 20 sukses yang baru kita selesaikan tadi pagi.
Minister Pius, I'm very happy for India. I'm very excited, and I'd like to commend Minister Pius, yourself, India, for the successful organization of the recent Trade and Investment Ministerial Meeting in Jaipur.
Saya baru 1 tahun jadi menteri.
I have been in a position as Trade Minister for only a year.
Tapi saya sudah 4 kali ke India.
But I have been to India for 4 times. This is my 4th trip to India.
Mr. Pius beberapa kali protes kepada saya karena kami surplusnya besar.
Even though Minister Pius Goyal raised a lot of concerns to me personally,
tapi saya punya keinginan kita punya potensi yang besar untuk meningkatkan volume perdagangan kita.
but I have a strong will and a strong commitment to forge a much closer relationship with India because the potentials are so enormous.
Sekali lagi tanggal 9 September saya akan datang lagi.
And I will be back here in New Delhi for the G20 summit. I will accompany the president.
Saya ingin menjadi jembatan agar segala hambatan perdagangan antara India dan Indonesia bisa kita selesaikan.
I tend to be the bridge between Indonesia and India so that we can overcome all the trade barriers between the two countries.
Teman-teman G20 juga saya ucapkan terima kasih banyak.
I also like to thank friends from the B20, from the business community,
atas kebersamaan.
And also for the G20 for all the friendship and the togetherness.
Sekarang Indonesia menjadi ketua ASEAN.
This year Indonesia is the chair of ASEAN,
yang menjadi pusat pertumbuhan,
which has become the epicenter of growth of the world economy.
Kami harap kerjasama dan dukungannya.
We really expect your support and your partnership.
Terima kasih Yang Mulia.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Mr. Munshi, you have attended the G20 for the first time, and India is immensely pleased that Prime Minister Modi has invited several countries for the first time. Mauritius was invited for the first time to the G20, as was Bangladesh and some more countries. How did it feel? How was the experience?
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I want to give you thanks that you invited me. It's a really great scope for me to understand what is happening in G20. Last 2 days I was there, and it was successful, all the meetings I attended. And I really feel that the way this thing happened, the discussion is gone. It will help in future, and this business will grow, I think so. And so all the discussion, the paperless transaction, and all these things happen, it will really help us. And we are, in 2026, we will be graduating from we'll be coming to middle income country. So we are very much interested to see how it works. So thank you very much for asking me. I am really happy, and it was a wonderful event you made, and successfully you done it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the idea that Prime Minister Modi has tried to articulate is that the voice of the global South, which is more inclusive, which is talking about the less developed countries and the emerging markets, should also have a greater say in decision making, in high policy making bodies. And I think it's been a great strength for all of us in the G20 to have Egypt, to have Mauritius, to have Nigeria, all of these countries also represented as a part of the G20 deliberations. Probably the highest number of members who were invited to any G20 so far in this current year. Incidentally, Minister Dr. Hassan has a flight to catch, so he will be taking leave from us a little early. But thank you very much, Dr. Hassan. Your team is panicking a little bit, though I can assure you, you'll catch your flight even if you stay a little longer. Minister An, we have had a trade agreement with you for many years in India. Korea has benefited significantly from investments coming into India. I'm sure we'll have a lot of participants in this room and beyond who would either be using a Hyundai car or a Kia vehicle. We'll have many people here using Daikin air conditioners. How do you feel about the free trade agreement with India, and where do you see the next steps?
Well, actually, this is the 50th year of our the relationship between Korea and India, and the FTA, of course, provided a huge momentum to deepen our relationship. But as you are well aware, nowadays we are facing numerous new challenges. So not just simply reducing tariffs and expecting more shipment between the country. Actually, we want to build industry ecosystem in the green renewable energy sector, the semiconductor area, EV, and even the aerodynamics, the sector, bio, and many things we discussed yesterday. So we have many the new challenge in the coming months and years, and I'm pretty sure that our effort to upgrade our relationship will give another very important momentum for our industry sector to work together and build industry ecosystem together and aim for a better future for our next generation.
Thank you. In fact, we've been joined by Mary NG this morning for the G20. And I must say, I'm truly grateful to Mary for taking the time, because she was in Indonesia last week. She flew back to Canada for a cabinet meeting. She's flown almost 20 hours to be in Jaipur at 6 o'clock this morning, changing, I think, 2 or 3 flights. And at our request, she's been kind enough to immediately fly back as soon as the G20 meetings got over and join us on this session. A big round of applause for Mary and her effort. Mary, you have a large Indian diaspora in your country. How do you feel working with Indians? How do you see them adding value to the Canadian economy? Give her this. Take this. Give me.
I can get on planes apparently, but I can't. Oh, there we go. I'm going to take a few shots. There we go. Okay. Well, let me take a step back for a moment and say to you, Piyush, it really is terrific to be here at G20 with you and with all of my colleagues and of course with the B20 tonight. And for those people who ask me how it is that you sort of manage the time zones as an international trade minister, I think many of my colleagues around this, here on the panel will say, just keep flying and fly more. Simple. Right? I mean, and you stay in sort of all time zones. But all seriousness, Canada is an extraordinarily multicultural country. We are a country welcoming of immigrants. In our view, talent and the strength of that talent that comes from people around the world to contribute to our workforce is in fact a strength that we wear proudly on our sleeves. And we have a wonderful diaspora from India, who many of whom I actually represent in the riding that I represent in Canada. And it has been a tremendous source of strength. And some of them are here today because they're business leaders in Canada as well. And those very business leaders who have the, and in Canada, you celebrate your heritage while being proudly Canadian. So as you are doing that, you have a lot to contribute. You're able to work in, in India in a way almost seamlessly because it is a heritage that is your strength. But what you also bring with you is, the sense of, Canadian fairness, the sense of Canadian, competitiveness. So to answer your question, I think it's a tremendous, it's a tremendous asset that we have with the Indian diaspora that we have in Canada. And I certainly draw on them and many of the diaspora communities across Canada in my role.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mary. In fact, the UK has a very large Indian population also. And, our High Commission wasn't feeling very safe. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's a fantastic question, Piyush. And I love that you're asking me in front of all these people because you know that I'm going to give the best possible answer. In any country, no matter how much of a global superpower you are, there will always be problems. And in the UK, one of the most interesting things, and I say this as someone who is also an immigrant to the country, is that quite a lot of the time, people don't integrate the way we want them to, and they bring problems and the same negative attitudes and the same issues from wherever, all over the world, wherever they come from, and bring it to the UK. And one of the things that we try and do, similar to what Mary said, is remind people that you're in a new country and you should imbibe the values of that country. And I personally thought that what happened, and I speak on behalf of the UK government, not just personally, what happened at the Indian High Commission was a disgrace. We should never have anybody attacked in this way, let alone representatives of another country. And we do all we can to make sure that when people come to the UK, they feel safe and secure. And if the question that people are asking is, do members of other communities, other countries, feel safe and secure in the UK? I think the answer that I can give that is most evident is that you look at our government, you look at our cabinet, you look at me, you look at our foreign secretary, you look at the prime minister. We are race agnostic. We're a multiracial society. The prime minister himself is someone who historically has Indian ancestry. So irrespective of those things that happen on ground, I think what we can reassure not just Indian diplomats or Indian government officials, but also business, is that you are safe in the UK. We welcome you. We will always look after you. And the friendship that we have with your country is one that has lasted many hundreds of years. We have a shared language, many shared values, the oldest democracy in the world, as well as the largest one. There is much to celebrate. And what we will not do is allow those negative incidents spoil the great story which our two countries can tell.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad you said that. And I can only endorse it because my own daughter loves being in the United Kingdom. She studied there, she's worked there. Of course, she's moved to the left from the right to pursue her studies now. But truly a great city, the city of London, and a great country. And I don't think anybody in India has any doubts about the fair treatment that all of us get when we are in the United Kingdom. And the diversity is truly been celebrated with a person of foreign origin, though now, of course, a British citizen. Being elected as the Prime Minister was truly reflective of your openness and much commended. Dr. Thani, right, thank you, Dr. Hassan. Dr. Thani is the gentleman with whom I was actively engaged in finalizing the free trade agreement with the United Arab Emirates. And we both proudly announced to the world that that's the fastest ever negotiated comprehensive economic partnership ever in the history of the world. 88 days, Dr. Thani, start to finish. And we were on the phone or on a VC almost every second day, resolving issues bilaterally, quickly, and if I may venture to suggest, smartly. How did it feel, Dr. Thani?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you, Piyush, for the invitation. And it's really a pleasure to be among this distinguished community. We're really proud of what we have achieved, and everyone is jealous on the numbers that we beat it. Wherever we go, and they say, how did you manage to do a deal with Piyush? He's so tough. And I keep getting the same question wherever we go. But the beauty about the UAE-India CEPA that we looked at the bigger picture. We looked at our people, how we're going to bring an added value for both nations, and how we're not going to let the small things stop the bigger picture. And the harmony, the chemistry with the Piyush was the main engine of concluding the agreement between both nations. One critical factor here is that the transparency and the trust, as well as the loyalty between both of us and between both nations, were the key drivers of the conclusion of the agreements. So whenever there is something, we put it on the table immediately, that this is a red line, or this is something which we can negotiate and even accept from both sides. And that was the spirit of the negotiation. I really hope that is going to be reflected in MC13 and in most of the other agreements that we're doing wherever we go. The result so far is excellent. After a year of the agreement, there was a growth. We achieved almost half of our targets of non-oil trade of achieving $100 billion by 2030. We're almost there. We're almost half of our way. We exceeded 50 billion for the first 1 year. And I'm sure now we're going to take this forward quickly to achieve our numbers.
Thank you, Dr. Thani. And if I may add on a personal note, there were two other elements which helped. A, the confidence that the leaders of the United Arab Emirates and India had in this partnership, in this relationship. I think that confidence was infectious. It helped us take certain bold decisions. And the other aspect was the fact that business persons and the people of the two countries supported this initiative. And I think when stakeholders come on board, when stakeholders are willing to give and take and understand that a free trade agreement is not about opening the other market for access for your goods, but closing your markets for the other's goods, that doesn't work. We have to look at win-win solutions, we have to be more open, and we have to be more confident in our abilities. And I think it is that trust that you rightly pointed out. And maybe we should appoint you as our ambassador to the United Kingdom, to the European Union, to the EFTA Union, to Canada, to the GCC, to Israel. I don't know, I'm running out of names. Peru. There's so many engagements going on simultaneously. But I'd like to assure all of you, India is for open government. India is for expanding international trade, because what we offer to the world, as I mentioned, I think in one of our meetings, I think maybe Valdis and I talked about it, was the 30 by 30 by 30 matrix. Today, we sport one of the youngest populations in the world of size. Our average age is about 28, 29 years. Under 30 population, almost 2/3 of the nation in the working age group, expected to remain under 30 for the next 30 years. And in less than 30 years from now, we'll be adding to our $3.5 trillion economy today, at least another $30 trillion to become a $35 trillion economy, hopefully by 2047, when we celebrate 100 years of independence. So a compulsive case for investment, a compulsive case to expand trade, population under 30, the demographic dividend in a vibrant democracy, expected to remain under 30 for the next 30 years, adding significantly to economic activity. Karan, you can sell more beers here than you would have sold in the last 50 years in the United Kingdom. Minister Kes, you're a part of the GCC, and we've been hearing off and on that the GCC wants to do a free trade agreement with India. What are your views about it, and where do you see that going?
First of all, my friend Piyush, thank you so much on behalf of Sultanate of Oman for inviting us to be part of the G20. And today, many Omani companies are here. A few of the largest companies had the opportunity to be here at the B20. And I have to congratulate you on the excellent organization of the G20 and for arranging for the landing of the moon to be part of the program, which was fantastic. I don't think any country can beat you to that, so fantastic. Minister Piyush, I have to say that having this meeting coming immediately after the G20, it has a very smart planning. All the issues we were discussing as the first-time attendees of the G20, all the issues we were discussing were very much part of how it impacts the business community. One issue which very much was in my mind was on the non-tariff barriers and an increasing protectionism that countries are going through. And I think one way of going about it is having the rule-based, fair, equitable trade that we were promoting in the G20. Under the leadership of His Majesty Sultan Haytham, we are really, and many people don't know that we have a new leadership in Oman with new energy. We really are adhering, and part of what G20 today endorsed was the open and free trade. And one of the ways of achieving it is through having a number of free trade agreements and comprehensive agreements. I can assure you, with the relationship we have between Oman and India reaching almost $10 billion over the years 2021-22 and the long historic relationship, we're very much looking forward to the negotiation of the free trade agreement with the GCC, or bilaterally or through the GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council. And in the meetings, we have a meeting next week, or within 2 weeks in Muscat, and it's on our agenda to see how we can look at it and expedite this. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Minister Kes. Catherine, if I may ask about the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. The United States of America has given significant leadership to the IPEF grouping, come up with very significant and bold expectations from all the member countries. And the general feeling is that that will become a new template of international multilateral engagement. How do you see this panning out, and how do you see this impacting businesses around the world?
So, Piyush, this is my second question, and you've not gone through everybody yet, but I'll take the question. I just want to make sure. Yes. So I appreciate this question greatly. The Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is a new kind of trade engagement that we are bringing, in particular to the Indo-Pacific region. It's largely a reflection of the fact that there's so many things changing in the global economy around us at the same time. And we've talked a lot about this in the first session of our G20 Trade Ministers meeting. We have the shocks of the climate crisis, an increasing urgency around the need to align the incentives of our economies to address the changes that we need to make. A digital transformation is happening all around us, increasing geopolitical complexities. And then I think that the pandemic itself has really laid bare the vulnerabilities in the kinds of supply chains that have developed over the past decades, and the need to create more resilience for our economies to be designing and making decisions around production, locating on the basis of resilience and not just efficiency. So in the midst of all of the changes, and I know this is something that we've all experienced on a very personal basis, but in government and also in business too, it's really hard to make far-reaching long-term plans in this moment. There's a lot of uncertainty and change around us. President Biden talks about it all the time as an inflection point that marks this moment in our collective histories. As a result of this, for us, it's been really, really important in our engagements with all of our partners to be innovating the way that we do trade, to be trying to push ourselves to adapt existing tools, but also to develop new tools to help us to respond to a changing world. And I think that that is very much at the root of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. It is in some ways an incubator. It is in many ways a platform for collaboration, for cooperation, to help the members of this particular grouping figure out how we can, in this moment, promote economic engagement that serves the interests of resiliency, sustainability, and inclusivity. And again, I just want to say I see very much the conversations that you have fostered at this G20 Trade Ministers meeting as reflecting as well the need for innovation, the need for adaptation, and the need to work together as a family.
Thank you, Catherine. Would it be fair to say that the United States and India today have the best relationship we've ever seen before in our history? The engagement, the quality of engagement, the huge respect and the huge amount of confidence that was generated in the state visit of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi to the US, and the bonding between President Biden and Mr. Modi. Does all of this reflect into possibly the best time in terms of our friendship and relationship?
So I think that you're absolutely right. We are at a very high watermark. Just with respect to the trade relationship, I want to let you know that my office that works on US-India trade relations and is the house of our institutional memory, that my team has told me that our working relationship is certainly the best that they have seen between two ministers from the US and India. So I think we should at least take all the credit for the trade relationship. Yeah, do you like that one? I thought so.
I endorse that and acknowledge that. I started, by the way, you had not, or you had come in or you had not. I started by saying this, that I've worked with 3 USTRs, but it's a completely new paradigm of working and so much more enjoyable, and we actually can pick up the phone and talk finally to the US and resolve issues as we've just done in the past. But I must mention to all our esteemed dignitaries in the room that we have on this dais, probably we've had many programs at the Taj Palace, but at this dais for the first time, $80 billion of trade sitting in front of us, $80 trillion of trade sitting in front of us. I was just trying to do some maths, making sure my chartered accountancy degree will still hold value in the UK. But this 80 trillion now is looking out to grow much faster, much better. And I think, Valdis, all of us in this room would be very interested in knowing, would you believe that the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, could become a threat to open borders and expanding trade? Particularly since, as you rightly mentioned, you are at the center of the globe in a sense with the West and the East. You are one of the world's largest trading partner for most of us in this room. How do you see CBAM playing out? And do you think it could at some stage threaten your domestic industry? Because you'll find that if everybody in the world doesn't follow suit, your domestic production becomes costlier. Maybe our exports to the EU will get affected. but everybody else will trade amongst themselves and EU could get isolated.
Indeed, that's an important question. And as you know, in European Union, we have our European Green Deal and commitment to become climate neutral by 2050. And one of the main instruments how we are working towards climate neutrality is through putting price of carbon on economic activity. So in a sense, and then letting market mechanisms work. Obviously, when we start putting price of carbon, the question becomes on carbon leakage, exactly as you raised. So if we are putting price of carbon in our industry, our goods become more expensive. It can be easily replaced by goods from the third countries. And so far, for energy-intensive industries, we had been exempting them from this emission trading scheme. So we were not putting price of carbon or price of emissions for industries like steel, aluminium, cement, fertilizers, electricity. But with the Green Deal, we will start doing so. And actually, we will start putting these payments as of 2026. So we need to deal with the carbon leakage by other means. And so what we are doing, we are putting the same price of carbon than what we are putting on domestic producers, also on importers. So payments would start as of 2026, and any price of carbon which is there in other countries would be deducted. So, when we were designing this measure, obviously we were paying lots of attention to make sure that it's WTO compatible. And for WTO compatibility, the key word is non-discrimination. So we are not discriminating, we are putting the same price of carbon, which we put domestically, we put it also for imported goods. So from that point of view, it's actually relatively close to the logic of consumption taxation, which is there in many countries and which is not seen as discriminatory or trade distortive. And that's exactly the way how we are designing the CBAM. We know that different countries are choosing different ways of dealing with climate change commitments and the ways to achieve those commitments. And obviously we will need to discuss those topics also in different fora, including in G20, in other fora, how at the end of the day we work together, as you exactly put, as one family for one future, ensuring that the future of our planet is sustainable. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think all of us in this room in business recognize that we'll all have to be responsible global citizens. We all believe that it is our collective responsibility to save the planet. And in a way, as the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, had mentioned, we are all trustees who have inherited this earth as trustees for the next generation. And we owe it to the next generation that we leave behind a better world than the one we inherited. And I think in that spirit, we are all very, very committed to working towards addressing this challenge. Many countries around the world are facing the detrimental effects of climate change. You have made a beginning, but I think this still has to play out. There could be concerns around the world. You really need to take the message across the world. Also recognize the differing levels of pollution that different countries are responsible for. The fact that many of us, for example, in India feel that we were not responsible for this problem. We support 17% of the world's population, but have barely contributed 2.25% of the carbon up there. So I think we will have to engage amongst ourselves also, and possibly that will lead me to my last question, and I left it for the last because I wanted Brazil to get an opportunity to share with us how they plan to take the G20 forward And this morning you mentioned sustainability is going to be at the core of your G20 presidency. So we would love to hear from you where we see, she's going to translate, where we see the G20 presidency take forward the sustainability story and bring the world together on a common platform, yet a fair and equitable platform.
Okay.
He's going to talk in Portuguese, but...
I will speak Tatiana. Tatiana, please. Sustentabilidade será o fator decisivo para o futuro. A garantia de qualidade de vida das presentes gerações e a certeza de qualidade de vida para as futuras gerações.
So sustainability will be the decisive factor for the future, for the quality of life of current and future generations.
A energia que moverá o mundo será a responsabilidade ambiental e social.
The energy to move the world will be the responsibility in terms of environmental and social aspects.
A transição energética que devemos fazer é aquela que combina a manutenção e o aproveitamento exclusivamente de fontes renováveis.
The energetic transition that we need to pursue is the one that combines, que combina?
Aproveitamento e a manutenção de recursos ambientais.
The maintenance and the good use of natural resources, the preservation and good use.
O Brasil pretende discutir à frente do G20 o crescimento sustentável em 3 dimensões.
Brazil intends to pursue a discussion in the G20 of sustainable development in its 3 dimensions.
Ambiental, capaz de preservar bens e valores ambientais.
Environmental, because it enables us to preserve values and environmental goods.
Social, porque deve ser inclusivo, capaz de gerar emprego e renda.
Social, because it must be inclusive, must be able to generate income and wealth.
E econômico, porque é a atividade econômica, o fruto da atividade econômica.
And economic, because economic activity generates growth.
Queremos, à frente do G20, debater o fortalecimento de cadeias regionais de valor sem oposição às cadeias globais de valor.
In leading the G20 next year, we want to foster regional value chains because they are not in opposition to global value chains.
O necessário fortalecimento da OMC e dos instrumentos de superação de conflitos ou controvérsias.
It is necessary to strengthen the WTO and to strengthen its dispute settlement system.
O debate crítico em torno de barreiras protecionistas muitas vezes injustificáveis.
And also the critical discussions about the protectionist measures very often unjustified.
Mas será a sustentabilidade ambiental, sobretudo, que será a marca dos debates que nós todos juntos haveremos de promover.
But it will be ultimately sustainability, environmental sustainability, that will be a key topic for Brazil's leadership in the G20 next year.
Espero ter respondido.
I hope I have replied to your question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Friends, we also have the minister from South Africa. I'd like to compliment her for the very successful conclusion of the BRICS summit and for all the wonderful outcomes, the expansion of the BRICS summit and the strong message that has come out of the BRICS. She has taken a rain check from any questions today. We are also exceeded our stated time. But with such a wonderful audience and with such a wonderful panel, I could just go on and on. But all good things have to come to an end. And truly grateful to all my colleague ministers for taking the time and a very special effort to fly in from Jaipur, navigate the traffic and come straight into the Taj Palace to be amongst all of you. I'm hoping that you will all join us for dinner so that more people get a chance to engage with you. But a big thank you to all my colleague ministers. Thank you for the support you gave the Indian presidency at the Trade and Investment Ministers meeting. Thank you for the support each of your countries has given Prime Minister Narendra Modi and India during our G20 presidency. And a big thank you personally for your friendship, all my brothers and sisters from across the world. Before I conclude, a small piece of good news to share with everybody. This afternoon, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, was conferred with the Grand Cross of the Order of Honor by the Greek government, and on behalf of the entire nation, on behalf of 140 crore Indians, 1.4 billion Indians, we would like to acknowledge the award. We'd like to recognize Greece for having awarded 1.4 billion people's efforts to make the world a better place to live in. Prime Minister Modi has received nearly 20 awards during his tenure as Prime Minister, 15 of them from different governments across the world, 5 of them from prestigious international organizations, but each one of them he has dedicated to the 1.4 billion Indians. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And a big round of applause for all my colleague ministers, for all of you for being such a wonderful audience. Photograph where the shawls. Ann came in late, she came in late.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, sir, and we'll just get you the stoles to present to the Honourable Ministers who came in a little later. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to our Trade Ministers and the Honourable Minister from India, who's led this B20 summit. We'd like to extend an invitation now to all of you to join us for dinner in Shah Jahan that is hosted by the B20 chair, Mr. Chandrasekharan, and the executive chairman of Tata Sons.
Textile.
If I could request everyone to please join for a group photograph. Please gather together for a group photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, dinner in Shah Jahan, hosted by the B20 chair and executive chairman Tata Sons, Mr. Chandrasekharan. Please join us there. A reminder to please leave the headsets on your chairs to be collected by us. We will begin tomorrow at 10:30. As you take leave from here, may I also remind you that we've got the PM Gati